Welcome to the Escort Training Module. This online module will prepare you to assume the roles and responsibilities of an escort officer. Your duty will be one of the most important and challenging assignments you'll ever have. This module will prepare you to handle not only the technical, but also the emotional challenges of your duty. This training module features a brief dramatic scenario that focuses on Private First Class John Iyer, who dies suddenly at his duty station in Louisiana and must be escorted home to Kentucky. You'll also hear from real-life escorts and receive advice from professionals experienced in various aspects of the escort process. This training module will focus on a situation where an active duty soldier, Private First Class John Iyer, dies of unknown causes in Louisiana. The escort accompanies Private Iyer's remains by commercial aircraft to his final place of rest in Kentucky. Soldiers who die in a contingency area, that is, in theater, are transported to the Doverport Mortuary in Delaware. After preparation at the mortuary, they are escorted, usually by government-contracted aircraft, to their final place of rest. If you are assigned this duty, you will travel to Dover Air Force Base. Alternatively, your escort duty may involve carrying the cremated remains of a soldier. Shown here are vital aspects of your mission. You must accompany and safeguard the return of the deceased soldier, while maintaining the highest standards of dignity, honor, and respect. Your professional conduct must reflect at all times the fact that you represent the Army, and in many cases, you will be the family's final contact with the Army. For deaths that occur in CONUS, the escort is assigned by the shipping CAC. For deaths that occur overseas, or OCONUS, the escort is assigned by the CAC with geographic responsibility for the preparing armed service mortuary.
Different types of escorts. We have, when we have the soldiers that are killed in theater, you have an escort that will go to Philly and Norman, escort them back from Dover to wherever the remains are. If it's a soldier from one of our units here on the installation, or a soldier from say a National Guard unit from my AOR, I request that the escort come from the battalion. We want that unit to provide that escort. It's important for that escort to know something about that unit to be able to relay that to the family. The other escorts that we have are special escorts. Those are escorts requested by the family.
I found out a friend of mine died, and he was also one of my soldiers in my previous unit. And I was requested by his mom to personally bring him home. And so they gave me a call Monday morning, first thing, and came in and did the paperwork, and found out she requested me personally.
And we do have special escorts. Usually it's a friend of the family, and we're kind of cautious on that. A lot of times we'll have a special escort along with a regular escort, two of them. Just to, because of the fact that if that person was close to him, say it's the brother of a soldier. Right now we have so many family members serving overseas. A lot of times it's going to be tough for that brother to be an escort, and we want to make sure that those two complement each other in getting that soldier back in a comfortable way.
And I tell them that you will always be in your Class A's. You will represent the Army. There will be no drinking or carrying on.
They liked that I was in uniform. The family did. So, but they tried to get me on my uniform a few times. But I kept telling them I was given this duty, and this is the way I've got to be.
You're one of the last links that the family has to the Army. They need to represent us well.
You have a family member asking you questions about the incident. And while we don't want you to say, "I'm sorry, I can't talk about that," that sounds like the Army is hiding something. So we coach them on how to answer that with suggestions like, well, there is an investigation going on, and there is always an ongoing investigation, and you will get that report.
If they ask, how did this incident happen, he shouldn't give them hearsay. He should only give them what's on their casualty report.
Do not carry rumors, speculations on what may or may not have happened with that soldier. So put away what you think, what you have heard, and be very professional in what you're saying.
As mentioned earlier, this module features a fictional family who has lost a loved one, Private First Class John Iyer. Let's look at the beginning of the Iyer story.
Private Iyer.
Good morning, Sergeant Bush.
How was the weekend?
Had a good weekend.
Great job on the PT test. Hooah!
What?
This guy, very young kid, you just want to know really what happened. I mean, he's all bubbling. We're talking one day, and the next day, he's just laying there.
So Wednesday morning at PT, our first sergeant, who worked with him every day, had a hard time telling everybody else. It was tough to swallow.
Your mission begins at the time you are informed of your selection as an escort and receive your orders. You may also volunteer for escort duty, especially if the deceased soldier is from your unit.
Ma'am, this is Staff Sergeant Michael Bush. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am? Yes, ma'am. Master Sergeant Gilroy told us the morning after it happened. Ma'am, I volunteered for the duty. Yes. 1100. I'll be there.
Well, I knew the tasking was going to come, so I beat the tasking by volunteering.
I thought it'd come without outside the unit. He's like, no, Sergeant Major wants one of us to do it, and First Sergeant wanted me to call you first. So I was like, okay. I said, yes, I'll do it.
Well, I volunteered because I thought we owed it to the family for someone to escort him home that actually knew him.
I know his wife, and my wife had discussed it. Why have somebody escort his remains who didn't know him, who doesn't really care, as opposed to somebody who could?
You have to maintain professionalism, no matter how close they are. You work through it. It's an honor. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
First sergeant and sergeant major called the parents, informed them, and they asked me would I escort the body back. Not a problem. I felt like I owe his family an explanation because it is my watch. So all responsibility does fall towards me.
Next, you will be briefed by the shipping CAC.
I didn't know where I was supposed to be, how I was getting there, what should I bring with me.
They don't know what to expect. They get the call. They knew the soldier. Here they come through the CAC. We give them a dynamic brief, which talks about every possible aspect, family dynamics, money situations we take care of with credit cards. We take care of rent-a-cars, that type of thing, hotels. We help in every aspect. But there's still an apprehension out there for these soldiers.
I still don't get it. Saw him the night before he died, and he seemed fine. Sorry.
That's okay. How well did you know him?
Just knew him from work, We didn't hang together.
And you ask them when you're talking to them and giving them the briefing, did you know the soldier? Was he a friend of yours? If he tells me yes, they were really close friends. I try to get into, do you know the family? Are you going to have a problem with your emotions? When you get there, I want you to realize that this family is going to be asking you questions. They're going to be trying to get you to relate to them anything their son may have done, said, or the incident that happened. Do you think you're able to handle this? And you can tell by their answers how they really feel.
This is a difficult duty.
Yes, ma'am, I'm aware of that.
The family will probably be very emotional, and you're going to have to view private ire. What do you think? Can you do this?
Yes, ma'am. I can do this.
Good.
They have a checklist that they go through. Tells you everything you need to have done, everything that they do on their part, who you're going to meet when you land. It basically tells you everything that you have to do step by step.
There's a form that you have to fill out, you know, your first inspection, your final inspection. The director has to put his comments on there. They gave me a pretty good briefing here at Fort Hood before I left.
You may be given some sentimental personal effects, which you must hand carry to the receiving funeral home. You will provide the personal effects to either the funeral director or the pad.
There are things like wedding rings, maybe a St. Christopher's medal, a cross. You know that those things have a personal meaning probably to a family member. And from experience, I've had family members ask, I want him buried in that. I want him to have that. I want him to wear that. He wore it all the time. So we try to send those with the escort because that's the fastest way to get them there.
We would place them in a black velvet bag, and the escort will present it to the pad.
These are the sentimental personal effects you're going to give to the pad. Just a few. Oh, this might have been a gift.
I got that same gift. See?
His personal dog tags I transport for his mother, and they also give me several sets of dog tags to present to the family members. It warms your heart whenever when you actually get to present something to a family member. So I thought that was like really cool.
You will also receive a DA Form 54R, Record of Personal Effects. If you are giving the personal effects to the funeral director at the receiving funeral home, make sure the CAO witnesses the transfer of custody and the receiving funeral director acknowledges receipt on DA Form 54R. After your briefing, it's important to contact the CAO for the family of the deceased. As mentioned earlier, the CAO can tell you more about the family and what to expect, and help you with other arrangements, such as where to stay when you arrive at the funeral or interment location. When the soldier is ready for travel, you will go to the preparing funeral home with the shipping CAC's Mortuary Affairs officer. First, confirm the identity of the deceased by checking identification tags at the head of the casket and on the soldier. You will move the identification tag on the short chain on the center button of the deceased soldier's uniform to the soldier's left pocket after verifying identity. Carefully inspect the casket itself for any damage. If any damage is discovered, report it immediately. Next, carefully inspect the soldier's appearance and their uniform to ensure that all awards and ribbons are present and everything is correct. For a casket, the documents will be in a head envelope located at the head end of the shipping container. Inside the envelope should be the transit burial permit, which must be given to the receiving funeral director. Once you have confirmed the information, mark the shipping container with your initials on the side corners of the head end. This will help you identify and find the container quickly. When the soldier travels on land, such as in a hearse, he or she does so feet first. The only exception to the requirement for the soldier to travel feet first is when traveling by air. As an additional safety precaution, the deceased is loaded and transported head first onto the aircraft and travels with the head of the casket facing the front of the aircraft.
It's good.
Use the initials you marked on the shipping container to verify the casket's position.
Each airline handles the situation a little bit different. We met down in the cargo bay, and I basically submitted his ticket. You get escorted to the plane with the body because you have to make sure that you get the body on the plane, make sure it's secured properly, and then when it's being put on the plane, you have to salute it. And then you come back, they escort you right onto the plane. There's a little bit of a wait at the airport. It's to be expected because you have to stay with the casket. And so we were over in the baggage, super baggage area, I guess you could say, cargo area. Waited there until they come and got the casket, and then I escorted the casket on with the forklift. They use a forklift to the plane.
Procedures at airports may differ. Airport personnel may not be familiar with military requirements. Throughout your interactions in the airport, do not discuss your mission with anyone except those who need to know.
Are you going to be able to be authoritative and tell them, this is what I've got to do? Because some airports may have someone working there that really doesn't know that you have to be there. And there are security people at airports, they're not going to want you down there maybe. So you've got to be able to stand up and say that.
If your trip requires multiple aircraft, you must oversee the transfer of the deceased between planes. Again, ask to be taken to the tarmac and observe the transfer of the deceased. Check the position of the casket as it is moved and perform a 3-second salute when it's taken on or off the aircraft.
We had one layover in Atlanta. The baggage handlers there were awesome. They take all direction from you. I mean, they've done it before. You can tell some of them have done it before. If there's somebody that doesn't look like they're doing something right, you stop them immediately and say, hey, this is what you need to do. And they'll listen. If there's a problem, you just get their supervisor and they'll handle things. Because they realize, it is a very honorable thing and very important and careful thing that they are doing, and they will listen to you.
If there is a change or a delay in your schedule while traveling, contact the shipping and receiving CAC, the CAO, and the receiving funeral home to inform them of the schedule change. When you arrive at the soldier's final destination, you will oversee the unloading of the casket from the aircraft.
The speeder's coming out first, right?
Make your way planeside and observe the unloading.
It's good.
Perform a 3-second salute as the deceased is taken off the plane. The family may or may not attend the arrival of the soldier. There may or may not be an honors detail at the airport, depending upon the situation. In the Iyer story, the family is not in attendance. The receiving funeral home director and the hearse is waiting for the soldier. The soldier's casket, in its shipping container, is loaded directly into the hearse. You will ride to the receiving funeral home in the hearse unless there is no room. In that case, you will ride with the CAO. If you have been authorized a rental car, the CAO can bring you back to the airport to retrieve it after you have completed your duties at the receiving funeral home. If distance precludes this option, the CAO can guard the deceased soldier while you obtain your rental car.
You can't bring the coffin out unless it has a flag draped over it when the family's there. So we had to bring the coffin out that had the casing on it, take the casing off, move it and put the flag on it, move the coffin back into the plane. Then the family came. The casualty assistance officer went and got the family then, brought them over to the tarmac. We then brought the coffin out properly and put it in a hearse.
When you get on the plane, it's just you and the service member and a couple of the staff that's moving them on there. But when you get off, you could be, again, being the only person there, or like in my instance, there was an honor guard, there was a bunch of family, a bunch of other military personnel
to where it was like, wow, you know, you gotta always be open that there's gonna be something that comes up.
The family was already there and they were waiting, and his mother really, really took it hard. At the time, it was snowing extremely bad, and as soon as the casket started coming out on the rails, she immediately fell to the ground, and it tore me up. But the thing that I guess stuck with me is I know she was upset, I know she was mad, and I never hold against anybody, but she was saying that we killed her baby. From the airport to the funeral home, I was still with the body. And I heard it from the time I got there to the time I left.
You may become, as an escort, part of where that anger is directed, because you are the Army. And the Army may have caused this in their mind because they did not see the problem, because they did not help the way the family thinks maybe they should have helped. And from their view, you as a representative of the Army are partially responsible for that. But the escort has to, again, step back a little and realize he's dealing with a family that has had a great loss. And anger is so much easier to deal with than the grief of losing that person.
Sir, how you doing?
Sergeant Bush, hey, happy you're here.
Thank you, sir.
At the receiving funeral home, the interment flag is removed and folded. Inspect the casket for damage and note any damage in your report, DA Form 5329. Inspect the deceased soldier for anything that could be incorrect, either in his or her appearance or the uniform. Make sure all decorations and awards are correct and undamaged.
But if it's not, you have to adjust it, and that's the hardest part, when you got to actually get in there and you know, straighten his hat up, or you know, straighten his uniform, his award, and you actually have to touch the soldier, you know.
Once we got to the funeral home, the father wanted to see his son, and we had to do a final inspection with the funeral director there. This is where we ran into some problems.
What is this?
Yeah.
This. Where? Right here on his collar. Looks like a stain. What is it?
After flight, there's always a possibility of them leaking fluid, which can be surprising, can be disturbing at best.
It's a little embalming fluid, but it's okay. It'll fade when it dries.
Yeah, it may, but
The stitches weren't sealed very well, and a lot of embalming fluid came out of the soldier.
That's really the only thing that I didn't really prepare myself for.
no, he needs a new shirt, or we have to get this one cleaned. It's got to be right.
Okay.
The funeral director will then inspect the deceased and make any notes on DA Form 5329. If either you or the funeral director discover any problems, call the shipping CAC. If the CAC is unavailable, call CMOC and ask to speak with the on-call case management section representative. Once these inspections have been completed, drape the flag across the casket, again, keeping the stars over the left shoulder of the deceased. Before you leave the funeral home, give the funeral director the transit permit for the deceased. This was in the head envelope. If you are carrying sentimental personal effects, you will give them either to the funeral director or directly to the pad. As mentioned earlier, if you transfer them to the funeral director, the CAO must witness the transfer of personal effects, and the receiving funeral director must acknowledge the receipt of these personal effects on the DA Form 54R. In the Iyer story, Staff Sergeant Bush and Private First Class Iyer arrived at night. The family was neither at the airport nor at the receiving funeral home. Staff Sergeant Bush will meet the family the next morning. Circumstances will vary, but when you meet the family, expect any number of emotional situations.
There might be a family disagreement. Your job is stay neutral. Don't get involved.
You would not expect how not crazy, but how emotional families get and how many different sides of feelings you'll see with anger and upset. And
the best advice I was given is any emotional turmoil from the family or any conflicts within the family is just I'm there to escort the soldier and not to get in, try not to or avoid getting into any of that conflict with the family.
And with the families fighting back and forth, one day you're told his service is on a Tuesday, the next day you find out it got canceled, and then the next day it's this day. So it's a lot of staying on your toes. You gotta make sure you're finding out what's going on.
It's a good thing, the funeral detail that came from Fort Knox, I called them ahead of time. I said, we're gonna need 2 of everything. We need 2 photos of the individual. We need 2 flags. We need 2 of everything, because the family was just, like I said, the family was irate, and they just cast the wife off as if she was just not a part of the situation.
Might want to try to find out, is it a small family or is it a large family? Because that will help with what to expect when you get there, because I got hugged by so many people and shook hands with a lot of people. It's going to be overwhelming.
Did you know John well?
Sort of. He was a great guy. Everybody in the unit liked him. He scored a 300 on his PT test, and that's a perfect score.
Then why did he die? What happened?
Ma'am, it's under investigation. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Sergeant. We'll get you reports as they become available.
Notice a few things about this scene. First, expect the family to ask you questions about their loved one's death. In this case, the cause of death is under investigation. Do not volunteer any information beyond what is authorized. Also, although not shown in this story, you may be invited to events that are not funeral related. If you attend such events, it is crucial to maintain proper decorum. You are not authorized, for example, to receive any gifts. When you attend the viewing, be prepared to stand at attention by the casket throughout.
They wanted to have a private viewing with him, and it was their choice whether or not I was in there. And they decided that they wanted me there. So I stood at the foot of his casket at the position of attention for an hour. And it was hard on my back, it hurt, but I really didn't care, My thought was to honor him and, to be at my best for the family.
At the viewing, we actually, me and my commander had came down too, and, we were both in the unit, obviously, so his family asked us if we could do, specific tasks for the funeral. Being in Class A's, they were like, oh, well, it would be nice, could you guys hand out programs or, whatever we could do to help. So
I just got up, told a few stories because I had one from basic training, one from Iraq. Told 2 stories to help. I told them in private, and then in the actual service, they're like, would you stand up and tell that story you told me earlier? I was like, yes, I'll stand up and tell it. So
word travels fast. You traveled back with him, and everybody wants to talk about it. Everybody wants to know. Most people engaged me as a friend. Some people engaged me wondering what the escort duties were, or like, what did you have to do? What was it like? And, vague answers. You don't want to give too much description because you don't want to appall anybody.
There was at one point they asked me to come over for dinner. I came over. They asked me not to wear my uniform, just come over and relax. They asked me a few questions about him, about where he worked and what was he like at work and stuff like that. And I was able to answer those questions. Any questions that they asked me I wasn't able to answer, I would tell them, you know, I'll have to talk to the Casualty Assistance Office or, you know, my commander or first sergeant to try to get you those answers. And I did.
Like I say, the family, they warmed up to me because you got a week and you're going to be there every day. Don't shut yourself off. Don't be so stuck up and so scared to where you can't be a person. Because they see the uniform, but they need to see the person. So if you be a person and you talk with them, you explain what you can and what you know, I think that really goes a long way with the family.
You know, none of them knew it, but I had my own time whenever I was alone. Had my grief.
You have to be professional. You let it all out when they're not around.
Because it helps you stand stronger while you're at the funeral home and, you know, at the actual funeral.
Escort duty can be emotionally difficult, probably more than you expect or realize at the time.
Just like they have grief counseling and different kinds of counseling for casualty assistance officers and notification officers, those escorts have that same thing available to them because they are with the family during the most emotional and stressful time. They have a lot on them.
I had to be strong for them because they're going to lean on you, and it's okay.
But I think it stopped the grieving process. I knew I had to be more professional in the public eye.
Once I left the cemetery, that's when a lot of weight was lifted off my shoulders. And I was able to relax, and because I knew Staff Sergeant Robinson, I was able to mourn myself.
I still haven't, you know, fully let go yet. I mean, I just don't want to think bad or think he's gone, you know. I mean, you know, I still got his phone number in my phone.
Hit me hard when I was at work one day and somebody called his name out. You know, looking for him. And that's when it like really hit.
So I mean, it doesn't just go away once you leave.
I don't want to say I'm not emotional because I care about everybody very much, but I don't believe I ever took care of myself. You know what I'm saying? I'm always worried about everybody else.
I'm pretty lucky. I have an incredible girlfriend that I can call at any time. She's always willing to stop what she's doing and talk to me, so that helps a lot.
Oh, I definitely had to reflect. I had to take a step back and actually reflect on life itself. I took a little leave, a little vacation time, and I just went home and went to my family.
Let's summarize what this training has covered. We described your mission as an escort and the standards of conduct to which you must adhere. We described how to prepare for escort duty. We covered each step in the escort process. And we emphasized the need to take advantage of self-care resources. Escort duty is one of the most important assignments in the Army. Remember, your professionalism and dignified conduct will communicate the Army's commitment to taking care of our soldiers and all members of our Army family.
But whenever I put that uniform on and I go in front of them, it was all about them.
Thank you for honoring my son.
Thank you.
I truly appreciate it. Great job, Sergeant.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Michael. You take care of yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
This is all about honoring the soldier. This is his last moments for him and his family to be honored for who he was.
300 on the PT test. Whoa! Escort duty is not for the weak of heart, because the events in itself would tear you down.
It was tough to swallow to do that job for somebody you know. It's still tough to do it for somebody you probably don't know. It takes a lot of courage, honor, and you got to stand strong.
In your mind, you have to have the mindset that I'm here to honor this soldier, and I will honor him to the letter as best I can until he's placed into his gravesite.
A lot of soldiers kind of look at stuff like this as a detail, and I hate to use that word. It's more of an honor to do that. They say you never leave a fallen comrade, and it's one of our warrior ethos, and it's something that I think every soldier should take to heart.